You open your eyes. There is a light morning chill stinging your skin, but you know all too well that in just a few hours, this coolness will turn into a scorching hell. The year is the 1300s BCE, the New Kingdom period, Egypt's most glorious era. Where are you right now? Your back rests against a stiff reed mat on the flat roof of your one-room mud brick house. Your pillow is a hard headrest carved from wood. Covering you is nothing more than a thin, coarsely woven sheet of linen. You take a deep breath. The first thing filling your lungs is the heavy, wet smell of mud brought by the river, the stench of dung from nearby coops, and the aroma of fresh leeks mingling with the morning humidity. You lean over and dangle your hand off the edge of the roof. What touches your fingertips is the clay of the wall. You do not live in stone buildings. Stone is reserved only for pharaohs and gods. You, however, are a living mortal, and your home, much like your body, was born from the mud of the Nile. And when the time comes, it will return to that mud once more. You stand up and look toward the east. From behind the steep cliffs of the eastern desert, the sun begins to cast its first rays across Egypt in shafts of light. Right at this point, you see that monumental boundary splitting the world in two. The earth beneath your feet is pitch black, damp, and teeming with life. The Egyptians call this land Kemet, meaning the Black Land. Kemet is the symbol of order, life, bread, beer, and existence itself. Your home, your field, your family, the gods you worship, everything you know and find refuge in lies within this black strip. But just a few hundred meters away, right where the black soil ends, another world abruptly begins. Deshret, meaning the Red Land, a scorching, brutal, and merciless desert. To the Egyptians, the desert is not merely sand, it is the kingdom of Seth, the god of chaos, a realm of death where wild beasts, nomadic raiders, and evil spirits wander. For your entire life, you will walk on the very boundary line between these two worlds. Take one step to the right into the Black Land, and you live. Take 2 steps to the left, and you perish in the heat of the desert. What do you see when you open history books? Tutankhamun gleaming in his golden mask, Ramesses II erecting colossal monuments, immense pyramids, and mysterious mummies. Kings, queens, victorious generals, and high priests inscribing prophecies on papyri. But do you want to hear the truth? Not a single one of those magnificent temples was built by a pharaoh. Pharaohs did not carry those massive stones. The priests did not sow the wheat for the bread they ate while performing their sacred rituals in those temples. There was only one force turning the gears of that giant machine called the Egyptian Empire. You. You are a fella. Your name will not be carved onto grand monuments. Your tomb will not be a pyramid. Your body will not be mummified and placed in golden sarcophagi. Your body will be buried in a simple pit at the edge of the field, dried naturally by the hot sand of the desert. But without you, that empire could not have survived for even a single day. The pharaoh's throne rests upon the sweat you shed on your field. So, what was it really like to be an ordinary farmer in ancient Egypt? How did your 24 hours pass? How many hours did you work under the sun? What did you eat? What did you drink? And what did you do when you fell sick? How did you feel when the Nile flooded? How did you deal with the Pharaoh's officials coming for your harvest? Which god did you pray to when a scorpion stung you? And as you lay on the roof at night looking up at the stars, what did you dream of? Today, we leave the noise of the modern world behind. We step into Egypt's mysterious, heavy atmosphere, back to where it all began, into the very heart of the soil and the river. If you are ready, tighten the linen loincloth around your waist, shoulder your wooden plow, and step with bare feet into the damp mud of the Nile. Your epic, year-long struggle for survival as a farmer in ancient Egypt begins now. It is the middle of July. For days, you have been waiting for news from the south. The priests are checking the Nilometer stones on Elephantine Island, measuring with notches how many cubits the water has risen. And finally, that moment arrives. A rumble begins on the horizon. The still green color of the Nile River suddenly shifts, turning first to red, then into a dark brown mud. Melting snows and monsoon rains in the mountains of Ethiopia sweep along thousands of kilometers of mud and organic matter, washing them right onto your field. The Egyptians do not view this merely as a natural occurrence. To them, the surge of the river is Hapi, the god of generosity and abundance, blessing the land of Egypt. In just a few days, the entire landscape you know vanishes. The pathways in front of your house, the pasture where you grazed your sheep, your boundary stones, everything is submerged. The valley turns into a vast, shallow lake where mud brick villages rise in its midst like tiny islands. Villagers board papyrus boats woven from reeds. To get from one neighbor's house to another, you must row, not walk. You can no longer see where your field ends and your neighbor's begins. Everywhere is covered by the brown blanket of the Nile. So, what does a farmer do while the land is underwater? You cannot plant crops. You cannot plow the land. Are you going to sit at home and wait for the waters to recede? No, because even though you are a free peasant in these lands, every single inch of soil ultimately belongs to the divine king, the Pharaoh. One morning, the shrill call of horns made from brass or seashells echoes through the village square. With the flooding of the waters, the massive gears of the kingdom's bureaucracy begin to turn. The Pharaoh's tax collectors and scribes have arrived in the village, their hands filled with papyrus scrolls. All the adult men of the village gather in the square. The scribe calls out your name. This is not a summons to enslavement. In ancient Egypt, this is known as corvée, a labor duty owed to the kingdom. In Egyptian society, everyone must give something to the state. The rich provide crops, while farmers give their muscle. You and the other farmers in the village are told that you will be away from home for a few months. You will either be going to clear the royal canals, open a new limestone quarry in the desert, or work on the construction of a massive temple, a monument to the pharaoh's immortality. You say goodbye to your family. Your wife gives you a few dried figs and a leather flask of beer for the journey. You shoulder your wooden hoe and your woven reed basket. Together with dozens of men from the village, you board the giant wooden transport vessels waiting on the river and set off toward the north or the south. When you arrive at the construction site, what greets you is dust, shouting, and a relentless, massive din of human activity. Thousands of farmers, just like you, have been gathered here from every corner of Egypt. Work begins with the first light of day. If you are lucky, you are assigned to repair the dikes and irrigation canals along the Nile. You carry mud in baskets and build embankments so that when the waters overflow, they do not destroy the villages. But if luck is not on your side, you are dispatched to the quarries of Tura or Silsila. Here, the air feels like an oven. The white limestone cliffs reflect the sunlight like a mirror, burning your eyes. With a copper chisel and hard diorite stones in hand, you try to carve blocks weighing tons out of the rock. Copper chisels are soft and dull quickly. They constantly need to be taken to the sharpeners. Then, that massive limestone block is placed onto a wooden sledge. Dozens of farmers line up in front of the sledge. You sling ropes woven from thick papyrus fibers over your shoulders. The overseer begins to chant rhythmically. Hey! Hey! You strain with all your strength. The rope flays the skin from your shoulder, and your flesh bleeds. Water and oil are continuously poured in front of the sledge to reduce friction. Slowly, inch by inch, that stone creeps forward. By the time evening arrives, your palms are blistered and your back is scorched by the sun. Yet, you are not treated like a slave in this workplace. When you get injured or fall sick, the site physicians come to bind your wounds and apply salves. For the Egyptians know, a healthy farmer means a working Egypt. As the sun sets and the cold wind of the desert falls upon the worksite, work comes to a halt. All the farmers retreat to mud brick shelters or tents in the temporary worker camps. You rub your aching muscles and wash your dust-covered face with the waters of the Nile. Now it is time for dinner. Daily rations are distributed to the workers from the pharaoh's granaries. Your daily ration consists of 2 large loaves of hard, whole-grain emmer wheat bread. Because the bread is baked in clay ovens and the flour is ground on stone mills, there are always tiny grains of sand inside it. As you chew, you feel the grit grinding between your teeth, which is why the teeth of ancient Egyptian farmers wore down and decayed at a young age. Sun-dried and heavily salted Nile fish, and the most anticipated part of the day, henket, or Egyptian beer. This beer does not resemble the filtered, carbonated beers you know today. Made by fermenting barley bread in water, it is a thick, soup-like beverage, sediment-rich, highly nutritious, and low in alcohol. The yeast and B vitamins within it restore the energy you lost throughout the day. You sip the beer through a reed straw, filtering it so the heavy sediment doesn't catch in your throat. You chat with your companions around the fire. Everyone speaks of their home village, their wives, and their children. Someone pulls out a wooden flute, while another keeps the rhythm by clacking seashells together. You play games with simple dice carved from knuckle bones. At night, you gaze up at the sky. The stars sparkle like crystals above the desert. Ra, the sun god and lord of light and waters, battles the giant serpent Apophis every night in the realm of darkness. You know that Ra will emerge victorious in the morning, and the sun will rise anew. This is how a day in the season of Akhet passes. Back-breaking labor, sweat, beer, and patience. As the floodwaters slowly begin to recede, this life at the worksite will come to an end. For the season of Peret, the time of sowing, when the soil will call you back, is right at your doorstep. When the month of November arrives, the weather shifts. The scorching heat of the desert gives way to a sweet coolness, and the river slowly begins to recede from the fields it has covered for weeks. What have the waters left behind? Right here lies the true miracle of Egypt, a wet, soft, pitch-black, squelchy layer of silt, brimming with organic matter. This soil is so fertile that you have no need for chemical fertilizer or letting the land lie fallow. The earth smells almost like freshly baked bread. Yet, a major problem remains. The floodwaters have swept away every fence, stone boundary, and pathway left from the previous year. Where does your field begin, and where does your neighbor's end? When you arrive at your land in the early hours of the morning, you see men holding long, knotted ropes. These are the rope stretchers. Under the supervision of temple scribes, they stretch out ropes woven from palm fiber, knotted at precise equal intervals, calculate geometric measurements, and drive wooden stakes into the ground to mark the boundaries of your field. To fight over boundaries is a grave sin in Egypt, for when your soul is judged before the gods, one of the declarations you will make from the Book of the Dead is, "I have not shifted the boundary of my neighbor's field." Your boundary is set. You step into the cold, damp mud with bare feet. Mud squirts up between your toes. The season of Peret, that is, the season of emergence and sowing, has begun. You must move quickly before the soil dries in the sun and turns into a hard brick. You have a window of only a few weeks. You bring out your wooden plow. This plow is remarkably simple. 2 wooden beams joined together, fitted with a plowshare made from hardened wood or copper. You yoke together the 2 oxen from your courtyard. If you are a poor farmer and have no oxen, you step to one end of the yoke, and your eldest son takes the other, pulling the plow through the earth with pure muscle power. You step behind the oxen. You hold the ropes and lean all your weight onto the handle of the plow. You call out to the oxen, "Come on, my girls, pull for me, pull for my children's bread." Ancient Egyptian farmers spoke to their animals and sang songs to them. The tip of the plow sinks into the mud, splitting it in 2. There is no need to cut deep furrows. Egyptian soil is already soft. It only needs to be aerated enough for the seed to settle in. You feel the sensation in your hands as the plow slices through the earth, the resistance of the soil, the creak of the wood, and the warm steam puffing from the nostrils of the oxen. All day long, you walk behind the plow with your back bent. Mud splashes against your legs, and as it dries, the crust tightens against your skin. By the time evening falls, the palms of your hands are hardened with calluses. Now the time has come for the seed to fall into the fresh furrows opened by the plow. As you plow the field, your wife or son follows behind you. They draw seeds from leather or linen pouches slung over their shoulders. There are 2 staple grains planted in Egypt: emmer wheat, an ancient 2-grained wheat, and barley. Alongside these, around the margins of the field, you plant flax for your linen clothing, as well as lentils, chickpeas, and lupines for your kitchen. Sowing seed is an art. If you scatter them too densely, the sprouts choke one another. If you scatter too sparsely, weeds overtake the field. Once the seeds are scattered across the mud, a massive threat looms. Thousands of birds soaring in the sky. Crows, pigeons, and waterfowl descend upon the field to feast on the seeds. Your children are tasked with driving the birds away with wooden slings and loud shouts. So, How will the seeds be buried beneath the soil? Will you use a rake? There is a far more practical and ingenious method: driving the herd into the field. You give a mug of beer or a loaf of bread to the village shepherd. The shepherd drives a herd of sheep, goats, or pigs into the field. As the animals are driven back and forth across the land, their sharp hooves sink into the mud and press down. This motion pushes the seeds to the precise depth required, just a few inches beneath the damp mud. Thus, the seeds are both shielded from the birds and embraced by the soil's moisture. For an Egyptian farmer, every creature in nature is part of the wheel of production. The seeds are sown, but the work is far from over. As the waters continue to recede, your field is left sitting high above the level of the river. To keep the seeds from drying out, they require constant watering. This is where a marvel of Egyptian technology comes into play: the shadoof. The shadoof is a long beam balanced upon an upright wooden fork. At one end sits a heavy counterweight of mud or stone, while at the other hangs a leather bucket tied to a rope. You stand at the edge of the river or irrigation canal. Pulling the rope, you submerge the leather bucket into the water. Once full, the counterweight of the stone on the other side lifts the bucket effortlessly. You simply guide it and pour the water into a small irrigation ditch above. You repeat this motion hundreds, thousands of times a day. Bend down, pull the rope, fill the bucket, let the stone lift, pour. Bend down, pull the rope, fill, pour. It is a hypnotic rhythm. Your shoulder muscles, back, and arms ache with every tug. As the sun rises, sweat pours from your body, soaking the linen loincloth around your waist. In Egyptian texts, scribes mockingly describe the farmer's plight. The farmer's hands are calloused. His clothes are filthy. He perches at the shaduf like a bird from morning till night. When midday comes, the sun sits directly overhead. You let go of the shadoof's rope and retreat into the deep shade of an old sycamore fig tree at the edge of the field. Your wife has brought you your meal. Inside an earthenware bowl lie freshly peeled pungent leeks, salted garlic, soft barley bread fresh from the oven, and a cold clay jar of water or beer. When you bite into an onion, the sharp flavor bursting in your mouth refreshes your throat, parched from sweat. Sitting in the shade of the tree, you gaze out over your field. You see the very first tiny green shoots beginning to emerge from the mud. In that moment, all the aching back, the calloused hands, and the sweat you have shed take on meaning. The Nile has given the soil. You have poured in your labor, and life sprouts once again in the black earth of Egypt. Toward the end of March, the weather suddenly turns harsh. The sun no longer merely warms, it beats down relentlessly upon both the land and man alike. That scorching wind blowing from the desert, the wind we call the Khamsin today, reaches the valley. The season of Shemu has arrived, the final season of the year, the dry season and harvest time. Those tiny green shoots you planted months ago have now transformed into a vast golden yellow sea of wheat, rising taller than yourself. You feel a surge of pride as you gaze upon your land. It is as though the entire field were blanketed in molten gold. Yet alongside that pride, a deep sense of urgency and tension takes hold. Why? because time is working against you. Day by day, the scorching wind dries out the ears of grain even further. If you wait too long, the wheat heads will shatter and spill their seeds onto the ground, reducing all your labor to waste. What is more, along with the heat, swarms of locusts, field mice, and birds could descend upon your crops at any moment. Your entire family awakens in the dead of night. Your wife, your children, your aging mother and father, no one stays behind. Even the sick are carried out to the shaded shelters at the edge of the field. This is a state of total mobilization. You will either gather the harvest within a few short weeks or go hungry for the entire year. You are in the field just as the sun rises above the horizon. You pick up your sickle. If you have a bit of savings, this sickle features a copper blade set into a wooden handle. But like many farmers, you still use a traditional sickle made of razor-sharp flints set into a wooden jawbone. With your left hand, you grasp an armful of wheat stalks, and with the sickle in your right hand, you slice them low near the base. Hundreds of people bend and rise in unison all around you. The women follow behind. They gather the cut stalks, tying them with thick linen cords into massive sheaves of wheat. The children collect even the solitary ears left scattered in the field. Not a single grain is allowed to go to waste. The gathered sheaves are loaded onto the backs of donkeys and carried to the village's communal threshing floor. The threshing floor is an open, circular space of firmly packed, hardened earth, enclosed by low mud walls. The sheaves of wheat are spread out here. Then, oxen, goats, or donkeys are driven into the enclosure. Whip in hand, you drive the oxen in circles around the threshing floor. As the heavy hooves of the oxen tread upon the stalks, the hard husks crack open, releasing the golden yellow grains of wheat. Then begins the dustiest work of all, winnowing. You pick up your wooden winnowing scoops. You wait for the wind to blow from the right direction. With the scoops, you hurl the mixture of wheat and chaff high into the air. While the light chaff and husks are blown away by the breeze, the heavy wheat grains drop straight down to the earth, forming a gleaming pile. Your throat, eyes, and skin are coated in chaff dust. The dust combines with your sweat to turn into mud, and your throat burns. Yet, as you gaze upon that immense mountain of grain resting on the ground, you forget all your exhaustion. But just at that moment, a long shadow falls across the entrance of the threshing floor. In an instant, all the joy is cut short like a knife. The laughter and songs across the threshing floor fall silent. The man stepping down from his palanquin is the Pharaoh's chief scribe. He has never shed a single drop of sweat in the fields. His hands are soft, his clothes spotless and pristine white. His head and body are shaved completely smooth, just like a priest. Beside him stand guards carrying palm staves and bronze spears. The scribe opens his wooden ink palette. He prepares his black and red inks. He unrolls the papyrus scroll before him. The text system in Egypt is merciless. Long before the harvest ever arrived, the scribe had already recorded the field's estimated yield in his ledger, judged by the water levels back during the Achet season. The scribe reads your name aloud. Your share for the royal granaries is 50 sacks of wheat. You swallow hard. If the locusts ate a portion of your field that year, or if your yield fell short because your irrigation canal was clogged, the scribe will hear none of it. He demands whatever is recorded in his ledger. And what happens if you cannot pay your tax? Ancient Egyptian texts describe this very moment. The scribe comes ashore to register the tax. The guards stand by holding staves. They shout, "Hand over the grain!" If there is no grain, they throw the farmer to the ground and bind him. The farmer is beaten until he faints from the blows, and then his field and belongings are seized to settle his debt.
The scribe orders his men to measure your wheat. Using wooden measures, they scoop the grain into sacks. Sometimes 20, sometimes 30% of your harvest is loaded onto donkeys and camels, destined for the granaries of the pharaoh or the local temple of Amun. You gaze upon the wheat that remains. Is it enough to feed your family until the end of the year and set aside seed grain for the coming season? As the scribe presses his seal and departs, you draw a deep, trembling breath. Once again, you have managed to survive another year. The tax is paid, the danger averted. Now comes the time to safeguard what precious grain remains. You carry your share of the wheat to the dome-shaped mud brick granaries in the courtyard of your home. At the top of these silos is a small opening. You climb a ladder and pour the wheat inside. A small wooden hatch at the bottom serves to draw out just enough grain for your daily needs. The exterior of the granary is plastered smoothly with clay so that mice and pests cannot break in.
Yet you cannot protect the grain with clay alone. You need a divine guardian. You walk over to the small mud brick shrine at the edge of the field. This is the shrine of the cobra goddess, Renenutit. Renenutit is the protector of fields, fertility, and granaries. Seeing how cobras hunted the rodents in the fields, Egyptians revered her as a sacred goddess. Upon the shrine, you lay a sheaf woven from the very first ears of this year's harvest. Beside it, you set down a bowl of fresh milk and pour a little honey. Sacred Renenutit, guard our granaries and make our bread bountiful.
As evening falls, a festive air sweeps across the entire village square. Months of grueling physical labor, fear, and uncertainty have finally come to an end. Great bonfires are lit. Jars of beer are unsealed generously. Dried gazelle meat, salted fish, fresh figs, and pomegranate wine grace the tables. Musicians begin to play their double flutes. Women keep the rhythm with tambourines in hand. Farmers dance, clapping their calloused hands together. Drinking, laughing, and storytelling carry on until midnight. For you, in the harsh and unforgiving landscape of Egypt, have brought yet another year to a triumphant close against the heat of the desert, the unpredictability of the river, and the whip of the scribe. Now, it is time for the land to rest. A few relatively peaceful weeks await you until the waters rise once again. The heavy labor in the field is over. The tax paid, or the seeds sown into the soil. As the sun sinks behind the eastern desert, the shadows lengthen. On bare, calloused feet, you walk through the narrow, dusty alleys of your village, heading home.
So, what was the place an ordinary farmer in ancient Egypt called home actually like? Your house was built from sun-dried mud bricks, crafted by kneading Nile silt with straw. Its architecture was perfectly adapted to Egypt's unforgiving climate. The walls were exceptionally thick, while the windows were barely larger than a hand's breadth and placed high near the ceiling. In this way, the scorching heat and dust of the desert were kept at bay, ensuring the interior remained a perpetually cool and dimly lit sanctuary.
You step through the door of your home. The wooden door hinge creaks. There are no carpets on the floor. The ground beneath you is made of packed mud and clay. Your furnishings are remarkably simple. You will find no fine furniture, heavy wooden tables, or carved chairs in your house. Furniture is a symbol of wealth in Egypt, where wood is rare and costly. In your home, instead, you have thick mats woven from palm fronds for sitting and sleeping, reed baskets to store your provisions, and massive clay jars of water. Even the pillow you rest your head upon is not made of cotton. It is a wooden headrest carved into a gentle curve to keep your neck cool. After a day of heavy labor, you step into the small courtyard at the back of the house. Your wife pours cool water over your feet from a large earthenware jar. As the dust, mud, and sweat wash off your legs, the peace of home begins to envelop your body. Now it is time for the evening meal. Dinner is the day's only tranquil moment, the time when the entire family gathers together. The kitchen is located in a small open-air courtyard at the rear of the house, ensuring the smoke from the oven does not fill the home. You sit down for the meal. Bowls are laid out upon a large wooden tray or directly on a clean woven mat. So, what will you be eating tonight?
Bread. It takes pride of place. Emmer wheat bread, baked by your wife in the oven that morning. Crisp on the outside, soft on the inside, and sometimes seasoned with cumin or coriander seeds. You tear off a piece and set it in the middle of the bowl. Legumes and vegetables. In the bowl sits a thick lentil or chickpea mash, slow cooked over a low fire. Beside it are pungent fresh garlic, onions, and leeks grown in your garden. Garlic is not merely for flavor, it is your greatest natural defense against illness. Protein. You will find no beef at your table. Red meat belongs to the grand feasts of temple priests and nobles. But the river does not abandon you. A wild duck brought down in the reeds with a wooden throw stick, or tilapia caught from the Nile and cured in salt, arrives at the table fried in oil. Dessert and drink. At the end of the meal, you enjoy a few dried black dates or sycamore figs by way of dessert. Alongside, of course, sits your cloudy, refreshing, and nourishing barley beer. You use no forks or spoons. You dip the soft inner crumb of your bread into your stew and mash, bringing it carefully to your mouth without spilling a drop. After the meal, you wash your hands in a clay basin and give thanks to the gods for the blessings they have bestowed. The meal comes to an end. As nightfall approaches, dangers begin to creep out from the dimly lit corners of the home. In Egypt, night is not merely darkness. Night is the domain of deadly yellow scorpions emerging from the sands, cobra snakes, and evil spirits roaming in the shadows. You have no gold to enter the great temples and offer grand sacrifices to Amun-Ra or Osiris. Besides, as a commoner, you are forbidden from stepping into the innermost sanctuaries of those massive temples anyway. Your religion lives within the walls of your home. You approach a small niche carved into the wall in the corner of your home. Two small clay figurines stand within. The first is Bes, the bow-legged dwarf god with his tongue sticking out and a lion's mane. At first glance, Bes appears comical and grotesque, but that is precisely the point. Egyptians believe that with his hideous face and the striking of his tambourine, Bes frightens away evil spirits, nightmares, and scorpions from the home. The second is Taweret, a goddess appearing as a pregnant hippopotamus with human breasts, bearing the back of a crocodile.
Taweret is the ultimate protector of women facing the perils of childbirth and of young children. When your wife becomes pregnant or your child runs a fever, Taweret is the very first power to whom you pray. You check the linen cord tied around your young son's neck. Dangling at the end of the cord is an amulet carved from green faience, the Wedjat, the sacred all-seeing eye of Horus. You believe with all your heart that this amulet will protect your son from vipers lurking in the thickets as he steps through the fields. In ancient Egypt, magic and religion are an inseparable whole. Magic is a divine shield granted by the gods to protect humanity from danger. When night falls completely, the air inside the house grows humid and heavy. Carrying oil lamps and woven mats, the entire family makes their way up to the flat roof of the house. On summer nights, the roof is your bedroom. A soft, cool breeze drifting in across the desert caresses your skin. You lie down on your back upon the roof, resting your head on the wooden headrest. Gazing upward, the spotless, crystal-clear sky of Egypt fills your field of vision. The stars shine with such brilliance that you can clearly see the Milky Way slicing across the heavens from one end to the other. To the Egyptians, the Milky Way is the divine reflection of the earthly Nile River, the celestial Nile. Your children gather close around you. In the stillness, you begin to tell them that ancient story you learned from your forefathers, the myth of Osiris. "My children," you whisper, "long ago, the god Osiris ruled over these lands. He taught us to plow the earth, to bake bread, and to brew beer. But his jealous brother Seth trapped him, tore his body to pieces, and threw them into the waters of the Nile." The children hold their breath as they listen. Yet his devoted wife Isis gathered Osiris's scattered remains and buried them in the earth. And do you know what happened? Osiris was reborn from within the dirt. That is why every year when the Nile overflows, that tiny grain of wheat we bury in the soil is just like Osiris. It dies within the mud, only to rise toward the heavens as a green sprout. This story is not merely a myth. It is the summary of your entire life. You are a farmer who witnesses the death of the earth and its rebirth year after year. This sacred cycle of nature is the guarantee that you too will endure beyond death. Your children's eyes begin to heavy and close. The flame of the lamp flickers low. The silence of the desert settles softly over the village. Tomorrow, you will wake again at dawn. You will stand at the shaduf once more, pouring your sweat into the soil. But tonight, beneath the stars, under the protection of the gods, and feeling the breath of the Nile, you drift peacefully off to sleep. As the heavy curtain of sleep settles upon you, your thoughts drift one last time, not toward tomorrow, but toward eternity. You know this. Kings have colossal pyramids, and priests have grand sarcophagi carved into the rock. Their bodies, with internal organs removed, are salted, washed with cedar resin, and wrapped in hundreds of meters of linen to be mummified. They spend vast fortunes just to gaze into eternity from behind golden masks. But what of you? What will the immortality of a poor farmer look like? When you die, they will place your body in a shallow, sandy pit dug near the desert's edge. Beside you, they will leave perhaps a small plow carved from wood,
a woven reed basket, and a few loaves of dried barley bread for your journey. The dry desert sand will absorb all the moisture from your body, nature performing its own mummification, quietly and without cost. But you believe with all your heart that death is not the end. The heart in your chest will be weighed on the scales of the underworld against the feather of Mot, the feather of truth. Never in your life have you committed murder. You have never stolen the boundary stone of another man's field. You have never secretly diverted the water from an irrigation canal into your own plot. The scales will balance, and when the gates open for you, you will enter Aru, the field of reeds. What the Egyptians call paradise is no place for idling above the clouds. Aru is a vast, perfect Egyptian field where the Nile shines brighter, the soil is blacker, and the wheat grows a full 9 cubits high. Yes, even in paradise, you will plow the earth. But there, the river will never run dry on your land. Your back will not be scorched by the oppressive heat. Locusts will not devour your harvest. And most importantly, Pharaoh's tax scribe, clad in immaculate white robes, coming to measure and snatch away the wheat nourished by your sweat, will never show up at your door. Together with your wife, your children, and your calloused hands, you will harvest freely among those golden stalks for eternity. Thousands of years later, historians will dig up your soil. In museums, they will gaze upon the mummies of pharaohs, their golden chariots, and the columns of massive temples, marveling what a grand civilization ancient Egypt was. They will attribute the splendor of that era entirely to kings and gods. But you know the truth. If you had not pressed your shoulders against that heavy plow on those damp, dark mornings, if you had not hauled that water upward at the shadoof beneath the scorching sun, as though your arms were ready to break, if you had not scattered that wheat across the field with your own hands, nor reaped the crop with that copper sickle at harvest time, the priests could not have presented those offerings in the temples. The pharaohs could not have lived in those majestic palaces, nor could the laborers erecting those stone blocks, weighing thousands of kilograms in the heart of the desert, have fed themselves. You are that nameless multitude whose names are never written in history books. You are the one who creates the lifeblood of civilization, the bread and the beer. The throne of the pharaohs may have been forged of gold, but that throne rested upon your back. The true face of the Egyptian empire is not the golden mask of Tutankhamun. The true face of Egypt is your sun-scorched, mud-caked, calloused, and weary face. Today, when you fast forward time 3,300 years and travel to those very same black lands, the names of the pharaohs have been scattered to the wind. The roofs of the temples of Karnak and Luxor have collapsed. The sands of time have buried the throne of the sun god Ra, and the statues of the ancient gods lie trapped behind museum display cases. Kingdoms, empires, languages, and beliefs have transformed. But when you descend into the valley, you will see one constant. As the sun sets, just as you did thousands of years ago, a fella clad in white robes walks home from his field alongside his donkey. His feet still press into that same black mud. The scent of the river remains unchanged, and that wooden plow carving through the earth has barely altered at all. For kings die and empires collapse, but the story of the land, the river, and the farmer who tills them never truly ends. In the black land of Egypt, As long as the Nile continues to flow, your legacy will live on forever.